Hey budget gardeners, Vita Loca here. Join me today as I give you a tour. It's middle of June and things are bursting with color, so let's go. We're on the south side of my house. I want to change things up a little bit. So we're going to take the tour coming in this direction, and I'm going to at a high level just show you the bed, but then we're going to go in close and I'm going to show you what's in this bed. You can see a ton of the peonies are blooming, and there are some other different colors in here, but it's mostly the peonies that you notice. So let me take you in for a closer look now. What we have blooming over here is an oxeye Shasta daisy. I actually like the oxeye Shasta daisies for the simple reason that they're blooming early, and I enjoy that color right now. As we move this way, we still have more of the daisies. Not blooming yet are some clematis, but they are budded up. They really want to climb. Next year, I'm going to buy a bigger trellis for these guys. And over here are some beautiful peonies. Let's zoom in so you can see how pretty that is. It has basically almost like a cream center, but then it has a blush pink on the outside petals. So beautiful. And here's another one down here. As we move along, some really pretty pink peonies. I wish you could smell these. Oh, it smells so nice. Down here, another clematis, and it's budded up. I don't remember the colors, so we'll find out in one of our tours what the colors are of these guys. Peonies, they bloom at different times. So this one you can see is budded up, but it's not blooming yet. But right next to it is a beautiful clematis or clematis. I love the purple color. I especially love it in this bed right now. There is a lot of pink happening in this bed, so the purple is just a perfect addition here. We have some more peonies. Just look how huge they are. Even the little spider on this one is loving its life. This peony is budded up, but I want to show you how pretty it looks inside. Another few more days, that's going to be blooming. I'll definitely be doing these tours more frequently so you can see all the different peonies that I have in the yard, plus anything else that might be blooming. It's nice to have that red color. A lot of pinks in this bed, so I'm definitely always looking for different colors of peonies. And I want to point out towards the front of the bed, I have a ton of Stella D'Oro daylilies. I love that I have the yellow color in this bed. And what I also love is that they're reblooming daylilies. It's a lot of work to go around and deadhead all my daylilies, but at the end of the day, it is so well worth it. Over here is another beautiful pink peony. And I just want to point out at the base of the peony plant, I have a pulmonaria. I just love the spotted look it has on the leaves. I just planted these this year, so over the next few years, these clumps will get bigger. Over here are one of the many hanging baskets that we planted together in the spring. And in here are the Tiny Tim Sweet Alyssum. We have the pansies. We have the Creeping Jenny. It's looking really pretty. Oh, and over here is the Lamium, which is blooming right now. I've been pretty good. I've been trying to keep this deadheaded and just keep it going. Still have cool weather here many of our days, so the pansies are thriving and loving life. Over here is another peony, and it hasn't opened yet, but you can see it's budded up. And right next to it is a large bleeding heart. It's just ginormous. Look how pretty that is. They're starting to go by, and what I love to do is just drop the seeds. As soon as these go by, they start producing their seed, and I just start shaking the seeds everywhere. And right next to the bleeding heart is another peony, and it's budded up. Looks like a red color to me. And as we move along, we still have more peonies, but you can see that they're not blooming yet. They're just budded up. And in between, we have some more of the Shasta daisies. I'm excited about this peony. I feel like I don't have enough white or yellow or light pink peonies in my yard. So anytime I see this, it excites me. I'm just glad to have a bunch of different shades of peonies happening in here. So right next to this light colored peony looks like another either pink or red colored peony. So when we do our next video, we'll find out what color that is. And as we keep moving along, we have some bleeding heart. It's the fringed bleeding heart. And over here is the pink one. And what I'm very excited about, because we all know how I love to propagate plants, at the base of this daylily over here are a whole ton of little seedlings of the fringed bleeding heart. So you know what I'm going to be doing? I will be digging those out and moving them around the yard, that's for sure. And right next to the fringed bleeding heart is a perennial geranium, and it's just starting to go by, but it really had a nice show, very pretty color. This is the only place that I have this geranium in my yard. So I definitely want to move this to other places. I think it looks really pretty towards the front of a flower bed. And at the back of this area, we have some more peonies that are budded up. And right next to it are some peonies that are not budded up. I'm going to have to check on them. They were all planted at the same time. It could very well be that those are just too deep and I need to lift them a little bit. And here's a white fringed bleeding heart. What I like about this variety of the bleeding heart or dicentra is that it will bloom well into the season. So it's a nice addition to have in the garden. And check out this clematis. I love the color. It's very, very striking. And what I really like is that you see it as you're coming up my driveway. I definitely didn't get to putting it on this trellis until later in the season. So if I did, it would be way up to the top of the trellis. So I'll definitely be fixing that for next year. The dianthus is in full bloom. Look how pretty it is. We have the pinkish colored dianthus mixed in with the whitish colored dianthus. And right next to the white dianthus, we have the white lobelia. And when the dianthus starts to go by, I will be cutting them back because they will do another flush of color. I'll be sure to show you how to do that in case you have dianthus and you're not sure how to go about doing that. Now the second flush won't be as strong as the first flush, but nevertheless, it'll just still be as pretty. All I've done over the years is just constantly divided this plant over and over again for this border. We worked on this bed a while ago. I want to say it was early spring. This is an ornamental grass or a miscanthus, and it's only going to get taller and eventually it will plume out and have like feathery type of foliage to it. This over here is liatris, also known as gay feather. I'm almost sure that's a white color. When I moved the perennials around in here, you were with me, we did a video on it. I thought for sure that I gave this guy plenty of room, but I can see that it maybe would benefit if I moved it out a little bit. That's fine. It's getting closer to where it needs to be. What else do I have in here? I have the Joe Pye weed. The Joe Pye weed is down here, and what I've seen is that it likes to take over a bed, but it is really pretty. So I'm going to do my best to try to control the Joe Pye weed and keep it towards the back of this bed. We'll see how I do. And over here, I just wanted to point out, I have a perennial mum, and it's a purple color perennial mum. My goal is for it to fill in this space right here, and that will provide nice interest for color in the fall. And we divided these dianthus together. So a few of them are not blooming, but I'll show you where they are blooming. Over here is more of the Joe Pye weed. And right over here, we have globe thistle. That's going to be really pretty. That's a blue colored flower. I have a peony here. We moved these peonies together. They definitely were shocked by the move. So I'm happy to get a few buds on it, but then a bunch of them are not going to do anything this year. Hopefully next year will be a better show for that guy. And we're going to zoom in down over here. These are more of that dianthus that we had divided together. And look how pretty the color is. I actually think it complements the other dianthus in this bed perfectly. I don't have too many of the white or light yellow colored peonies in my yard. So the ants are loving it. They do no harm to the peony plant. They're just sipping on the sap. But anyway, I love this color. How pretty that is. This is a huge plant. I would love to divide this and move this around my yard. At the base of this plant is a seedling of the false indigo or baptisia, and very close to here is a big, huge baptisia or false indigo plant, and it is doing really well here. This was just a seedling that had dropped a few years ago, and usually this plant takes about 3 years after it drops its seed to form the blossoms. So this is the first year that it's actually blooming. I really didn't love the placement of it because it's right inside the middle of all my spring daffodils, but I do love it where it's right behind the peonies. I actually think that they complement each other very nicely. And these pink ones are starting to go by, but look how huge they are. And you will notice that with a lot of my peonies, I have them staked. And even though I have them staked, I would say this particular plant would benefit from having a taller stake. And the reason I say that is right over here. I think if the stake was just a little bit taller, or the cage, it would benefit that plant. In this empty space, this is where I'm going to be planting a ton of annuals. Over in here, over in there, any pockets that I can find in this flower bed, I'm going to be packing it with the annuals. Why? Because I started so many from seed. That's why. So I will be showing you what my plan is, and we're going to make this beautiful together. You probably noticed I have a ton of bloodroot all over my yard. If you didn't know what the name of the plant is, that's what it's called. And it is just starting to turn yellow. So within the next few weeks, I'll be cutting those back. Right next to it are candy tuft. I do need to shear them back. I need to cut them back. Now's the time to do it. I'll show you how to do that. And at the base of this rhododendron are a bunch of hosta. I planted those in the spring. So that's why they're just single plants, but over time those will spread. And here are some pots that we put together in the spring. They're all looking nice and full. And right near my side walkway, this was the bed that we worked on together, where I had 3 arbor vitae removed. And you'll see that the colors are looking nice and vibrant in this bed. We have lobelia as well as alyssum. The vinca is, I think, struggling a little bit though. They're there, but they're just not putting on as good of a show as I was hoping for. I think I need to give them some fertilizer. We're on my side porch here, and I just wanted to show you the window boxes. I love how the pansies look with the chives in bloom right now. The raised beds are looking great. Here's the raspberry plant, and then we also have some strawberry plants, and they're just budding up. And if you look closely, we even have strawberries. In this raised bed, we have a couple of blueberry bushes and a lot more strawberries. These are the smaller variety of strawberries. Early in the spring, if you remember, we planted up a couple of raised beds, and we put the alyssum, we put some stock, and we put some ranunculus. Look how pretty everything's looking. I'm going to zoom into some of the ranunculus so you can check them out. It's a pretty orange color. And look at the stalk. It might be tiny, but boy, is it pretty. A couple of pretty colors in here. Another ranunculus. I'm very pleased with how these raised beds came out. Here's another raised bed with, again, the alyssum, the stock, and the ranunculus. Some really pretty white stock. And check out this ranunculus. Just a quick high-level look of the nursery bed. I have definitely been selling a lot of plants, and I've been adding more to my nursery as well, just by dividing plants in my garden. I learned a lot of lessons this year, and I will definitely be sharing that with you. I'll be making a video talking about which plants were popular, which ones were not as popular, the feedback that I got from different people. So as we leave the nursery bed, you'll see my driveway, and we're now going from the south side to the west side of my house. So let's head down there and see what is going on. The columbine's going by, but it really did put on a pretty show. I just think it's so delicate and dainty. And right in front of the columbine, we have the beautiful lady's mantle. It is just now starting to bloom. And I just think it's such a beautiful addition to the front of the flower bed. Right next to the lady's mantle, I have spiderwort. And this one is budded up, but as we move to the other side of the flower bed, I'll show you what it looks like. And here's a blossom that's open right now on the spiderwort. I just think they're so pretty. I didn't realize I love the color purple. I have quite a bit of it in my yard. The daffodils are still green, so I'm going to leave them towards the front of the bed. And in the center of the bed, we have a hydrangea. So it will put on a nice show later in the season. I'll be sure to show you what it looks like when it's blooming. As we leave this bed, I just want to show you one other thing, which is the Stella D'Oro daylilies. I have them all around my yard, but you can see they're budded up. I have some hosta in this bed right here, and there's also a rhododendron that's in the bed, and that rhododendron did not really put on a great show this year. Not really sure why. It might be a lighting situation, so I'll have to take a look at that. We did divide some creeping phlox, and we put that towards the front of the bed. Some of it's looking kind of dry. I will be adding some irrigation to this area, and that should help it because it really needs to have water here. So tucked in over here is a unimus. What I like about it is the foliage or the color. I just think it is a nice pop in this dark section of my flower area. I have a lot of false indigo or baptisia, and it's not terribly happy here. I think the reason is it's actually not very sunny. I do get morning sun here, but they need a lot more sun than that. They don't love to be transplanted or moved, but I've done it before, so I will be moving all of these into a sunnier location. You can see, though, this one is blooming. I believe that it just gets a little bit more sun coming in. Look how pretty that is. And I know that these baptisia or false indigo can get huge and wide. So they just need to be happier in a different location in my garden. The one thing that's definitely blooming in this bed, you can see it, is the lilac tree. I love the smell of lilacs. I wish I had a lot more sunny areas in my yard. I don't, but I will take what I can get with this lilac tree that's right here. Towards the front of the bed, I want to point out, even though they're not blooming, it's just things for you to look forward to. We have a ton more of the Stella D'Oro daylilies. They're budded up. They'll be blooming soon. And then we also have a perennial mum. That's going to come later in the season, in the fall. It's a yellow color. And right next to it, down over here, is a aster, and that blooms in the springtime. So my plan is to eventually move the aster and the mums forward a little bit because they're getting encroached by the daylilies. You can see over here that this Baptisia or false indigo is also pretty happy. But I know they would be much bigger because these plants are, I would say, probably 4 or 5 years old. So I definitely have spots for them somewhere in my yard where they get a little more sun. Over here is a yucca plant. I really have a hard time in my yard figuring out where to put the yucca plant. So I put them back here, and you can see that it is budded up. It has a blossom that's taller than me. It's a white color blossom. When that's blooming, I will be sure to show you what it looks like. It's actually a very pretty blossom. We have some creeping phlox that's gone by. I think I've mentioned before in videos, I like to tuck it at the base of trees. And in this bed, we have a lot of creeping phlox towards the front of the bed. We have a bunch of daylilies, and when they bloom, I will be sure to show you what they look like. The daffodils have already gone by that are back here. And then there are a bunch of iris that are blooming now, or some of them are budded up. They're so pretty. And even though I have a ton of iris down here, I did divide them last year. So some of them are blooming, a lot of them are not. Every year after this, they will just look better and better. They just got divided last year, so they need a little bit of time. And this right here is a beauty bush. This came from my mother-in-law's. And there is, if we zoom in a little bit, I'll show you, there is a small little blossom on this one right here. I'm hoping next year is the year that it puts on a great show. I know that these can get really big, so I'm looking forward to seeing what it looks like next year. I love the color of this. This is called the Happy Face Hearts Potentilla. I need to remove the tag. But anyway, I got this on clearance last year, and it is just so pretty. I clearly need to come in and clip off parts of it that didn't survive the winter, but I'm enjoying the blossoms while they're there right now. Look how pretty this looks next to the purple iris. Just want to point out, I have a couple of lilacs that are down here. They haven't bloomed for me, so I need to see if they need some lime. Maybe they need some more sun, and they should be in a different spot. And I had some coneflower or echinacea, the purple color. I just put it down here. I'm going to see how it does down in this section. Here's an azalea. It's only been here a year, so it's struggling, but it's alive. So I'll take that it is alive, and it did produce some blooms for me. When I planted it, it actually was already struggling. So maybe every year it'll get better and better and look stronger. Tucked here near my white birch tree are some mini hosta. I just wanted to point those out at the base of the tree. This over here is the ivory halo dogwood. I love this color, this variegated leaf out here in this darker section of the garden. And right next to it, it clearly needs water. This is a forsythia that I moved from a different section of my yard early in the spring. I really need to give it water. We've had a lot of rain, but that's not enough. I definitely need to give it water probably once a week right now. In front of the forsythia is a weigelia, and you can see that it's looking very pretty with its pink colored blossoms. So in this tour, I'm definitely going to give you different angles of my yard and my flower beds, just so you can get the whole look of what it looks like. So you can see again, down there is where the lilac tree is. There's a bunch of the daylilies. And then we had areas where we had all the iris and the potentilla. And we're going to keep on continuing closer down here in the next section of the bed. It's a little bit shadier as we head down this way. What we're looking at here is a red Japanese maple. This came from my mother-in-law's as a small little seedling. It's getting bigger now. And as we move down this way, this is just a small version of that beauty bush that I showed you earlier. I got a few of them from my mother-in-law's, so they're all at different stages of growth. And then towards the front of this bed, we have a whole bunch more of the Stella d'Oro daylilies. Over here, we have a sedum. I'm almost positive it's the Autumn Joy sedum. And that looks really beautiful in the late summer, early fall time. And over here, we have a coreopsis. Very pretty yellow flowers. And it looks like it's budded up, so it should be blooming pretty soon. This right here is a crabapple tree. It already bloomed and looked very pretty. I like it for its height and the structure it adds to this garden. And another beauty bush. So when we're leaving the west side of my yard and heading towards the north side of the yard, before we head that way, I want to show you the front part of my house. And there is a lot going on in here. This is where my front door is and my pond. So I just want to show you from a high level what everything looks like here. And then what I'll do is take you in for a closer look. And I just had to point out, I have a kitty. So as we head to the front walkway, this is where all the pansies overwintered. And in a previous video, I showed you where we made these pots up together. One thing I wanted to point out is when it comes to dahlias, it's really important to be deadheading them. I need to do that. So this one right here, I need to deadhead and cut that back. And this dahlia right here, same thing. I need to cut these off. So that's the one thing I noticed with these plants. I have to be really diligent about deadheading them. Second thing that I noticed is that they're turning a little bit too yellow. So I need to look into why that is. I know I have irrigation going to them. Maybe they're getting too much water. Maybe they're lacking some fertilizer. So I'm going to try to fix that problem. As we leave this area where those pots are with the dahlias, we now enter where my front walkway is. And in one of the videos, I showed you where we were planting a whole bunch of flowers in here. So you can see here are some coreopsis. I'm going to be coming in and deadheading all of these, cutting them right down to the base. That just encourages this plant to keep blooming. And I did want to point out that one of the snapdragons that we planted together is budded up. So these snapdragons that are in here are going to be blooming before we know it. And look how pretty that the alyssum and the lobelia looks. It's really taken off since we planted it. And remember, we planted the Dusty Miller as well. I wanted to show you on the side of my garage, I have a whole entire bed of black-eyed Susan or rudbeckia. And it looks so pretty just having that one solid color in this section. Now you will notice there is some pink in here. And I used to have, years ago, that bleeding heart in this bed. So that's why, even though I've been digging it out, it still makes its appearance, which is fine. So this is my front walkway. And as you enter the front walkway, that's that pattern that we were just talking about where all the plants are. The lobelia, the alyssum, the Dusty Miller, and the coreopsis. And then as you enter on the right-hand side, that's where you're going to see the pond and also the front porch. We worked on this together. And we planted a whole bunch of plants in this area. Everything is doing really well. I want to take you in for a closer look on the mini hosta. There are so many different kinds, so many different colors, different textures. Some of them are even budded up. Check this one out. That has buds on it, and this one has a little bud on it. I just love how they look around my pond, tucked in around the whole entire pond like that. I'd love to know, do you have mini hosta in your yard? And if you do, where did you put it? I'd love to know the placement of it. We are on my front porch, and the window boxes that we put together are looking good. I may be taking the plants out of here and putting in some impatiens, because I do have some impatiens that I started from seed. And I would say of all the window boxes that I have, this is the shadiest of them all. So I think those impatiens would do really well here. So be on the lookout if I end up doing that. And we have a couple of pots or containers that we had put together, and they both are looking really nice. The chives are all blooming. I just think they're so beautiful. We have the primula down here. I've been trying my best to deadhead it, which is why it's still blossoming. And then we have the lamium, looking as beautiful as ever. I just love that the chives are a perennial, the primula is a perennial, the creeping jenny is a perennial, and the lamium is a perennial. It's just such a great use of perennials in a pot. So in this big bed here, we basically don't have a lot planted in the center, and that's because that's where the septic tank is. A couple of things I want to point out though. I, again, have never trimmed my boxwood. I'm planning to do that, but I'm going to take it easy. I'm not going to trim it hard. I'm planning to do both of those pretty soon. And then right here, I'm actually thinking that the false indigo or baptisia might do well right in this spot. I might pull it out though. I don't think I want to have it tucked in too close to the house. What do you think? Do you think this would be a nice area for it? So that's what I'm playing around with, but I'd love to know what you think. And then to the front here, I have 3 spirea. They are not happy here. They don't do well. So I really should pot them up at least, get them out of here, and think about where else I can put them. Right near the walkway, I have all these daylilies. And what I was thinking might look nice is I have this geranium and the cranesbill geranium. And I'm thinking that that would look really pretty next to the yellow of the daylilies. And it stays short. It doesn't get very tall. And so you can see I have a bunch of pots of them. I dug them up from my sister-in-law's house. And so I just placed them as such. And over time, they'll bunch up and look really pretty in this area. So we're leaving the west side of my house and we're heading towards the north side of my house. It's kind of like Heuchera Valley. Let me take you in for a closer look. Over here I have a boxwood and it definitely needs to be shaped up. Behind the boxwood we have some hosta. So if we can come in for a closer look, I can show you. I've just been adding hosta a lot to the side of the bed. And also behind here is another one of those weigelias. It looks so pretty. Look at the color. These get pretty big over time. This is a little small piece that I have, but I'm enjoying it. So we're definitely entering a shadier part of the garden. And towards the front of this bed, we have a bunch of heuchera. Over here is a leopard's bane plant. And notice it's actually sending off a blossom. This is what they all looked like in the early spring. Such a nice bright yellow color. And we have some more sedum back here. And tucked in here, they've already gone by, are a bunch of Jacob's ladder. We have some daylilies and wonderful hosta, all different colors and shades of hosta. Over here is a bleeding heart. I moved it in the spring. It was originally in the hosta garden. And this is a red colored bleeding heart. There are also some astilbe tucked in here. We have an astilbe down over here, and we have an astilbe over here. I just planted them this spring, so I'm not sure if these ones will bloom or not. Here's another baptisia. It's in the shade, so it needs to get moved. Trial and error. This is how we learn. Clearly, these type of plants, like this one, needs to be in a sunnier location. This astilbe is budded up, so probably at some point when I do a tour in here, I can show you what that looks like. Again, there's another fringed bleeding heart. Pretty much the same repeating pattern as the other side. So I'll meet you over there. Let's keep going. Similar types of plants here, lots of different shades and varieties of heuchera or coral bells, and another beautiful columbine. See how pretty that is? It's very happy in this shady location. It's a good place to put columbine. Tucked behind this tree, we have a ginger plant, the wild ginger. I just love the foliage on the plant. I think it's so dainty and cute. And we're going to keep going this way. Pretty much the same pattern as the other side. I typically try to do a lot of my gardening where I have one tree over here, I have one tree over there, and in between there might be some sort of a pattern that's happening here. But then as we transition to the next tree, as I'll show you, the pattern changes slightly. So there are some elements that I carried over, like all the heucheras. I try to do that, keep the same type of pattern going. But between these two trees, I now have a different pattern that I've started. And over here, we worked on this flower bed together. There were a lot of weeds in here. We took the weeds out. There was some perennials. It was like a holding bed for certain perennials. We took those out, and we planted a bunch of hosta, and we also planted a bunch more of the Jacob's ladder. So even though these plants are little, they're going to take off over the next few years. And then as we hop over past this tree, we also worked on this bed together. And in here we have some different hosta as well as the heucherellas. It's either heucherella or tiarella. I always forget. And towards the front of the bed, what's blooming right now are these beautiful coral bells. I just love the pink color on them. And right next to them is their neighbor. And you can see they're budded up, but check out the color. I definitely like coral bells for their foliage, but the blossoms are equally as pretty. I just wanted to point out at the back of the bed here is another one of those beauty bushes. And you can see that this one is definitely loving life. I need to cut out some dead pieces, but let's just enjoy the blossoms that are on here. I still have not worked on this bed here that has all the weeds. I know the clover does look pretty, but nevertheless, it's a weed. I want to take you around here. It's something, though, that is just so beautiful. I think you already see it. Amongst the weeds, I must have planted a poppy at some point in here. I most likely winter sowed it at some point and then didn't know where to put it. Look how pretty it is. It was open much bigger earlier, but I love the color. It's like a light pink or salmon colored. Also, one thing I wanted to point out amongst the weeds there are some peonies right here. I'm going to walk over to them. This is the first time they've bloomed for me. I took peonies from my parents' house where they used to live. So these peonies are very special to me because it came from their home. And they've never bloomed for me, so I'm very excited that they're going to bloom this year. We're now entering the east side of my yard, and the hanging baskets still look pretty over here. And as you head down, you can see all the hanging baskets and how nice they look along the pathway. And right behind me is my hosta garden. You can see there are a lot of hosta tucked in this flower bed. And what I love is there are different colors, different sizes. We have mini hostas towards the front of the bed, and then we also have some very large hostas mixed in here. And since we put irrigation in here, I think the hosta are much happier. Look at all the different colors. We're looking at my back porch, and the clematis has gone by at the base of the porch. But if you look up top, look how beautiful the window boxes look. Very quickly, I wanted to point out at the base of this tree, check out the mini hosta. I just love how they're tucked here. In a recent video, I showed you how I edged this flower bed, and we also added in a bunch of perennials as well as annuals. Can't wait to see how that turns out. It's a nice sized bed. I used to have the kids' above ground swimming pool in this area, and look how we changed it. Over here is my raised vegetable garden in the backyard, and you can see that we still have a line of lettuce, and also next to the lettuce, I have 2 rows of green beans. They're the bush variety. And the asparagus, I am letting it now just do its thing. I'm not harvesting from it anymore. I've enjoyed it enough. And so we tied them back just so that they're not flopping over. And over here, we have some cucumber that are just popping out of the ground. Because we live in zone 5 and it's been kind of cold, the cucumber are slow to grow, but they are appearing now. And I want to point out, I still have a ton of creeping Jenny as well as weeds that I need to get out of this vegetable garden. And on the other side of my raised vegetable garden, I have some snap peas. They are taking off. I'm waiting for those blossoms to appear. So next to my vegetable garden, if we leave that and we just head all the way towards the back of my yard, there are still a ton of weeds, so I'm not going to take you in for a closer look, but I can tell you there's a number of daylilies in there. There's a lot of peonies. There's Shasta daisies. There are a bunch of plants. So once I get it weeded, I'll show you them and what they look like. Way in the back of my yard, I have a bunch of rocks tucked in, and my plan is to make a small rock wall in the backyard. I also have 2 rhododendrons that are not happy where they are. I will be moving those as well. And the plan is, as I edge and weed flower beds, to continue to add drip irrigation to each of these beds, to look around my yard, and to basically go shopping within my own yard and just add flowers and keep making the backyard look really pretty. So here in the backyard, the one spot I did want to show you that I worked on recently, I tucked in a bunch of shorter blue fescue plants. And the reason I did that was I've noticed when I'm looking on the internet that blue fescue looks great when planted in mass. So I want to try this out in a small section of my backyard. And it's between these 2 rocks where the rocks have a little bit of a bluish hue on them from the lichen or the moss or whatever it is that's growing on the rocks. So as we are leaving the north side of my house and heading to the east side of the house, there are a bunch of different plants in here. We have towards the front of the bed, purple colored creeping phlox. We have some bloodroot in here. There are, in the center of the bed, heucheras. There's Stelladora daylilies. There are some iris, the Siberian iris. And towards the back of the bed, we have a bunch of different plants. We have some rhododendrons. We also have forsythia, and there's a lilac tree in here as well. And over here near the trail, we have some very pretty blue hosta. And notice the lamium. I just love this ground cover. I think it's so pretty. with or even without the blossom. There are a bunch of asters that will bloom in the spring. I have a ton of astilbe, and they are just budding up. There is another columbine, and right behind the columbine, check it out. Look how pretty this beauty bush looks. It's never looked so pretty. It's only the bottom part of it. I'm guessing that it was budded up, and when we had the freeze, maybe the top part of it got hit by the freeze. I'm not sure, but I'm enjoying it nevertheless. And as we move this way, there are a bunch of other plants, another rhododendron, and then over here is a clematis, and look how pretty that blossom is. Now, there are different types of clematis. There are 3 different stages, I believe it is. And I'm still learning a lot about what there is to know about this plant. But one thing I am pretty positive about is it shouldn't be doing this. And I'm almost sure I'm supposed to be cutting it back to the ground, because that's why it's not blossoming over in this section here. It's only blossoming up top. So I will be fixing that problem. At the base of the clematis is more of that geranium. A lot of the lamium. I just love it on this side of the bed. And over here is a very pretty columbine. I not only love the color of this columbine, but I also love how big this plant is. In this section over here, there are a bunch of different plants. I still need to weed it, but there are repeating plants that we've already talked about. And right here is a penstemon, and that's going to be blooming pretty soon. I have another one on that side of the bed. Right next to this penstemon is another bleeding heart. I love how dainty and cute this bleeding heart is. And the white bleeding heart. At the back of this bed, I planted Solomon seal. I just planted it last year. My intent is that these plants will get bigger and will fill in this whole area beautifully. Around this statue, we have betony or stachys, and they are just budded up. They're going to be blooming very soon. And towards the front of the statue is a type of primula. Move down this way, I have a very large forsythia that's right here. I intend to move this towards the back of the bed. It was very small at one point. It's not small anymore. And I have other plants that I want to plant in this section. I went to a backyard nursery recently, and the very kind woman gave me a bunch of these plants here. So I'm going to be dedicating a spot in my garden just to her. But she was very sweet and gave me a whole bunch of different iris in her yard, as well as some lupin. As we head this way, I just want to point out towards the back of the bed is a really pretty pink peony that's never bloomed over there before. So I'm excited to see it blooming this year. I have a ton more of the astilbe. You can see it's budded up, and a lot more of the stachys or betony. And they are all budded up. I can't wait to show you what this looks like when it's blooming. As we head down this way, I had some plants that I winter sowed 2 years ago. I didn't know where to put them. Well, I put them here. So you can see that this is lupin, and I have some dianthus that's here. I also have a lot of different hosta in this bed. You can see there's one here. Towards the middle of the bed, I have another hosta back there. And check out this hosta right here. I love the color of it. It's a small hosta, but it's mighty. Towards the front of this bed, I have some pulmonaria tucked in. Another forsythia that needs to be moved towards the back. And as we head pretty much from here all the way to my hosta garden, it's Pretty much the same plants we've talked about. Some of the other plants that are tucked in here are the Stella d'Oro daylilies, and we have lots of heuchera. We have a lot of white dianthus. I like it in this section because it's a little dark, and lots of purple columbine. These are just little seedlings that didn't bloom this year. Looking back at the hosta garden, I love how this red heuchera looks towards the front of this border. I think it really pops. The white dianthus is also blooming, and it looks really pretty. The good news is that the greenhouses that were over here, which I had 2 of them, have been removed. And the bad news is I still have a lot of plants I need to get in the ground. Now, keep in mind, our last frost date here in Zone 5B in New Hampshire is Memorial Day weekend, which means we really shouldn't be planting until that weekend, if not a week after. So I am behind in getting all these plants in the ground. But with that said, I'm not terribly behind. So I'm not going to be too hard on myself. What I'm going to do over the next week is make a lot of videos that show you what I'm going to do with these plants. Definitely some survived and some didn't, but overall, I still have a lot of plants to work with here. And remember, I started all these plants under grow lights inside during the winter months. So I just wanted to give you an update on all these plants. And also, I did get some of the plants into pots, hanging baskets, containers, but still a lot more to do here. So be on the lookout for those videos. They'll be coming out within the next few days. So on the rolling cart, I still have a ton of plants. Again, the next week is going to be a huge week for me. I'll be showing you where all these plants are going to be going. I hope you enjoyed this tour. I had a lot of fun doing it. I love showing these flowers when they're blooming, and I can't wait to continue showing tours of my garden as the year progresses. Please be sure to check out the next few videos that come out because they are going to be changing and every week is going to be different. Until the next time, I hope you make it a great day with gardening.